Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are live here at Every Point's a Winner. We're a little bit behind schedule. I just got back home. Let's get into the first match tonight. It is the replay of last year's grand final between Melbourne and Penrith. And hopefully it's a little bit more entertaining than that game was. And there's some really good ball playing. It's going to be tough. We know that Penrith have won virtually, 9 or 10 straight now to get to where they are. They're running fourth in the competition, and Melbourne are clear second in front of Canterbury, chasing Canberra. So let's have a look at the ins and outs straight away, ladies and gentlemen. It's Maverick Guyver is in for the Panthers. Kane Bradley and Marion Seve is in for the Storm. Out is Ryan Pappenhausen. That's a surprise for Melbourne Storm, and we'll have to have a look and see who's taking his place. Okay, let's have a look here. And we'll go. It is in Accor Stadium, is it not tonight? CommBank Stadium. Sorry, I always get those two confused. CommBank Stadium tonight for the Panthers versus Melbourne. I'll just move this microphone a little bit closer. Make sure this is recording okay. Okay, let's have a look at the matchups here. Dylan Edwards against Nick Meaney. Nick Meaney's been all right at fullback, but he's got to take up that role tonight with Pappenhausen not being there. Thomas Jenkins up against, Milky Jenkins up against Grant Anderson. And then Isaac Tago had a big game last week against Joe Chan. Marion Seve comes into the centres against Casey McLean. He looks like a pretty solid dude as well. I haven't seen much of Marion Seve's game. I don't know whether you have. Brian To'o up against Xavier Coates. Two great players anyway, two great wingers. One very tall winger, Blaze Talangi, up against Cameron Munster. Nathan Cleary up against Tyron Wishart. Moses Leota against Stefano Utokamanu. Then Mitch Kenny, one of the best defenders in the game, with another best defender up against Harry Grant there, captain for the Melbourne Storm. Lindsay Smith up against Josh King. Some great matchups here. Luke Garner. Unfortunately, it is raining in Sydney at the moment. We've got a really shocking day weather-wise. So let's take that into consideration. The ball could be very slippery. The handling will not be as good as what it should be or what it usually is. So then we have Isaiah Papali'i up against Trent Liera. That's another good matchup. And Liam Martin there in the second row against Elise Katoa. Just looking at the interchange, Josh Pezzett, Jonah Pezzett, Alec McDonald, and Tui Kamakamika for the Melbourne Storm with Lazardi. And then you have Brad Schneider, Liam Henry, Matthew Eisenhuth, and Scott Sorensen. That could be a nice injection into the mid-game. He's a great player, Scott Sorensen. Very good in defence and quite elusive in attack for his size. Okay, let's go across and see who the TAB value punts are here. I've been thinking about it all day, and I think Melbourne are not as good as Penrith in the wet, so we're going to tip Penrith here. And they're playing away from home, Melbourne. It's their chance to really stand up and stamp their authority over Penrith here and stop the big run of success they've had recently. Last time they met, it was Melbourne winning by 6 points, 30-24. That was in round 3 of this year. So that was around about, March or April? Anyway, that was back on the 20th of the 3rd. So let's have a look here and see what the tab is putting up head-to-head. It's $1.50 Penrith and $2.60 Melbourne, the away side. But for anytime try scorers, Thomas Jenkins leads the favouritism here at $1.80 into Xavier Coates at 2-1. Brian To'o 2.10, fairly good value there for Mr. To'o for a change. Paul Alamotti 2.10. Grant Anderson 250. Hasn't scored for quite a while. Kane Bradley, 250. Casey McLean, 260. Scored his last 4 matches and has been very good to us here at EPOL. Dylan Edwards missed out last time, 290. Isaac Tungo at 310. Elise Katoa, 325. Luke Garner, 4s. Nathan Cleary, 425. Got a feeling it's going to be fairly tight early, that we might see a few tries. Don't want to go too hard with this game. Number one, because it's raining, and number two, because it's a game where it might not be that many tries scored. Both sides will be trying to solidify the defence, and if it's Penrith, if they do get a couple of tries in front, we know what they do. They just strangulate their opposition into submission virtually. Looking at the other players, Trent Leary's 10s. He went over twice for us about 3 or 4 games ago. Utogamano has good value. All the big forwards are good value there, including Leota, but he hasn't gone over forever and a day. You don't really want to lead out with anyone that hasn't scored regularly, or at least one-on, one-off situation here. Okay, so let's have a look and see if we can grab our banker. Tyron Wishart killed us last week because I had a dream of him, and then I totally forgot about the dream until when he scored, and I remembered I had the dream. So we need to dream our way into contention here with this game. I'm leaning towards Casey McLean at 260 because he's good value, and I'd like to lead out with him for Penrith since I'm tipping Penrith. Casey McLean 260. Then we're going to go over to Melbourne's Elise Katoa. Yes, he didn't score for us last week. A guy that's got most of our doubles and trebles up for us in the past. We're not going to leave him out here. Elise Katoa as the other main banker. So banker 1, Casey McLean for Penrith, and banker 2, Elise Katoa. The third banker is very important. So here we are tipping Blaze Talangi. Blaze Talangi for Penrith at 375. Really, really good value. And then we're going to swing back to Harry Grant at 450 for Melbourne as our 4th leg. Our 5th leg is just as important. And I'm putting on top here Liam Martin. He's 5-1, still fairly good value there, 5-1. And we'll stick with Liam Martin for our 5th selection. As a reserve, I'd be chucking in 2 players, possibly Luke Garner for Penrith and also Lindsay Smith for Penrith. So there you go. I'd entertain Scott Sorensen, but he probably needs a game or 2 more as he may not get a full game. He is off the bench. So, and I'd also wouldn't be surprised if Trent Leary entertains us as well. Okay, let's get over to the next match, which is tomorrow. It's Warriors versus St George. This is a very tough match over in New Zealand. Make sure you check the weather. We might be able to have a quick look now, even though it is tomorrow. I have got Auckland City here in this setup. Let's have a look at Auckland City. It's going to be mostly cloudy with 20% chance of rain. So put that into your calculations, people, when you're doing your anytime try scorers. So let's go across to the sports bet and have a look at the matchups and the who's in, who's out. Get lost there. TikTok, why won't you go away? Where is the sports bet here? There we go, sports bet. So it is, of course, at Go Media Stadium in Auckland. That game is at 6 o'clock, and it'll be the first of a couple of matches on Friday, I would imagine. The team list here, ins and outs. In for New Zealand is Edward Cosey. Tanya Boyd is back. Wade Egan is back, which is a great inclusion for the Warriors. Some good inclusions here for St George. Christian Tuapoloto, one of their top players and top wingers. Loki Pacifici Tonga and Matthew Feagai is in as well. Out for St George is Moses Sully. Unfortunately, he had a blinder last week. He went off with that injury to his leg or his knee or his ankle. I know he was being carried from the field. Blake Laurie is out as well, and with the New Zealand side, it's Tiari Martin is out, and Kurt Capewell. It's a big loss there for the Warriors, but I think coming in for him is the James Fisher Harris. Okay, and I think he got a bit of time in suspension. Let's have a look at the matchups here, and it is Tane Tuapiki. He's been playing really well of late. Up against Gutho. Gutho had a big game last week, set one try up for the young kid and scored himself. Watini Zalesniak is Dallin, is up against Terrell Sloan. Really good matchup there. Adam Pompey up against Buchanan, the kid. And then Matthew Feagai up against Nickel Clockstad. Nickel Clockstad's been moved to the centres. That's a really interesting move there. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck on the wing up against Corey Allen. And it looks like Harris Tavita up against King Togia, who had a very big game last week in the 6. Tanner Boyd back in the 7 against Kyle Flanagan, who had a fairly good game last week. James Fisher-Harris up against Emery Goulet. Good luck there, Emma. And then we have Wade Egan up against Damien Cook, and then David Clement up against Jackson Ford. He's been playing out of his skin most of the year, Jackson Ford. One of our favourite players here, Lika Halasima, up against Leilua. So he's going to have to match his brother there. Pretty big matchup, that one. Mariota Niakure up against Hamish Stewart. And it is Aaron Clark up against Jack DeBellin. DeBellin's been having an extraordinary season for him. He used to be hot and cold, but he's been playing a lot better over the last 5 to 6 weeks. There was a couple of defensive lapses he had, and he got stripped off in one of the games, but he's back to his best defence. Okay, let's go across to the TAB and see where there's a bit of value here. $1.53 the Warriors, $2.50 St George. So Warriors are expected to win this, according to the experts. Last time they met, Warriors snagged a winning field goal to beat, and I think it came from Luke Metcalf. Unfortunately, he's not there. 15-14 over St George in round 10. So that was, 14 rounds ago, 14 weeks ago. The first anytime try scorer here, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck leads it up at $1.80. Unfortunately, because he's such a prolific try scorer, although he doesn't score every week, he's always very skinny and very short. So you really want to find a bit of value and then lead it into possibly Roger in the 3rd, 4th, 5th selection there. Clint Gutherson, 265. Lika Halasima, 275. It's a little bit skinny for Lika. But sometimes he only comes up at 250. It's very skinny when you consider he's a forward. Jacob Little at 6s. Just don't know how much time he's going to get. That is the question when you play Jacob Little. James Fisher-Harris. Sometimes Coach Flanagan brings him on and he gets a good run alongside of Damien Cook, and then sometimes he doesn't, depending on how the game's going. Hamish Stewart, $4.50. He hasn't scored for a long while. Harris Tavita's been disappointing lately. He hasn't scored for 4 matches at $3.50. Pompey hasn't scored for the last 2 at $3.50. Christian Tuipulotu at $2.30 there. Very good value. He didn't score last time because he ended up doing his his calf muscle or his hamstring again. So you want to give him I think you could play him at that value, but you want to give him a game or two, I think, to get back into the swing of things. Although he wouldn't be in the field if he wasn't right, so pay strong attention to him. We're going to lead out here with Terrell Sloan because he's such. Excuse me. I didn't want to cough. I will anyway. Away from the microphone. Terrell Sloan at 205 is our first banker for St George. and we are tipping St George to win this game. We're also putting in Lika Halasima as our other lead banker. So lead banker 1 is Sloan. Our lead banker 2 is Lika Halasima. Then we're going to swing it a little bit wider here, and we're going to chuck in. We're going to chuck in Jackson Ford. I'm taking another punt with Jackson Ford as the third selection. He was very close to scoring last week, and at 650, that could be a show stealer if he goes over for our parlays. 650 there, and yet he hasn't scored for quite a while, but he's getting closer and closer and closer. And I just sense he's going to be able to break clear near the line and go over. As our fourth banker, which is really, really important here at Every Point's a Winner, we're going to head back towards St George and chuck in Christian Tuapoloto. Christian Tuapoloto there at 230. So we've got the two wingers in there. And for our fourth leg, Clint Gutherson at 265 is still very good value. Of course, he scored last week and set up that try. And for our fifth leg, we are going to go back to the Warriors here and put in one of my, actually, yes, we are. We're going to spin wide here, and we're going to chuck in a giant of a man, if I can find him here. He's just eluding me at the moment. Where are you? There you are. Marata Niokore at 350. He hasn't scored for some time, and there's a lot of players that haven't scored for a long time in this match, so they're going to have to break the hoodoo at some stage. 350 for your fifth leg, and as an emergency, I'd just chuck in the two favourites there, closer to the market, Rudyard Tuivasa-Sheck and Dylan Watini-Zelezniak as your reserve banker. That's if there's any scratchings or you have any extra money there. Okay, so we're tipping St George there narrowly in a very close one in the home ground of the Warriors. St George can't afford to lose it. If they do, their season is dusted. So I think they'll bring their best game over to the Auckland side of things. Let's go on to the next match. That's the second match at 8 o'clock. This is a classic game. Unfortunately, it is raining in Sydney. Pay close attention to that. I think there's more showers have been tipped for the weekend, so just pay close attention to that. Now, the bookmakers are a little bit lost to who to tip here. It's 2-1 Sydney Roosters, $1.80 Bulldogs. So they're as confused as everyone else. This is an old rivalry from grand final times as well. They've had some cracking matches over the past. So let's just go to that sports bet and let's look at the ins and outs, because that's important to our tipping here. Now, for the Roosters, there's quite a few players in. Blake Steep is back in. Junior Tupou, Sandon Smith has been announced. Taylor Lesalu and Zach Docker-Clay. Now, on the Bulldogs side, it's Connor Tracy, Jake Turpin, Curtis Morin, and Toby Sexton has been announced that I reckon he'd be reserved. And, of course, Sia Wong, with that injury from last week, is out of the Roosters. Let's have a look at the matchups here. Really interesting matchups. At the fullback is Jacob Kiraz. Yes, he's been playing well, but he's no James Tedesco. So he might have a bit of work cut out there in this game against James. Daniel Tupou up against Jethro Renakama. Billy Smith up against Bronson Cherry. That's a really good matchup. Billy's been playing out of his skin lately. Robert Toya up against Steve Crichton. Well, they both played Origin, so that's really interesting. They are facing up again. It's Mark Nwanda Nidawazi. He's up against Inari Tual, who went over twice for Canterbury last week. He's on the wing there. Hugo Savala up against Matt Burton. Sam Walker, Lachlan Galvin. Very good. Sam Walker's his kicking game has been so outstanding of late. It's going to be very, very interesting
if he can have the same sort of kicking game on a very wet surface. Hopefully it's not as wet as what we think it may be. Nafahu White up against Max King, Connor Tracy up against Bailey Hayward, and Lindsay Collins up against Samuel Hughes, Angus Crichton up against Kickow, and we have Egan Butcher up against Jacob Preston, Victor Radley. Thank you, Richter, for continuing to wear the headgear, and you're still scoring tries. Amazing. And he's up against Jamin Salmon there. The interchange look pretty strong very strong for Canterbury with Josh Curran, Mahoney. Then we have Harry Hayes and Kurt Mann. The interchanges for the Roosters. Loa Lu is in. I haven't heard of Loa Lu before. For Kenny, we've seen a few runs from him. Blake Steeper will probably get more time. And Spencer Leniu has been announced there. He must have just served a fine for his misbehaviour in the 4 players being sent from the field last weekend. So I did have a look at that, but I think he just copped a $3,600 fine. Let's go across. So it's very even in the matchups here, but I think it's going to come down to the kicking game. Who has a better kicking game? Matt Burton or the short kicking game from Sam Walker? Will the conditions suit Canterbury more? I think they'll suit the Roosters more, providing the game, the field's not like a quagmire. Okay, so we are tipping the Sydney Roosters here. They're on a run and they're on a roll. They need to continue to win to have a chance to slip into the 8. That's between them and the Dolphins, obviously. And there's 1 or 2 sides biting at their heels, 2 points behind them. Okay, let's have a look at the anytime try scorers. Last time they met, it was a close game too. Canterbury just won in round 11 of this year, 24-20. So first try scorer, we don't want that. That's too hard to get. And then once the try is scored, then your money's done anyway. At least with any time try scorer, you get a run usually for somewhere between 40, 60 to 80 minutes. Providing injuries don't cast a dark shadow on your selections here. Daniel Tupou 2-1. Geez, that's a pretty open market here for anytime try scorers. Very interesting. Usually you'll have odds on with some of the players. Inari Tuali, $2. Mark Nawanga-Nitawazi is $2.05. Jethro Renakami, $2.05. And then you have Jacob Kiraz, $2.50. It's really hard to catch the Canterbury side. The 2 weeks prior had Steve Crichton and Kickow, and both the 2 times I had them, they both had disallowed tries when they looked like one of them, I believe, was a try from Steve Crichton, but somehow was disallowed from the bunker fronts intervening. I would suggest here we're going to look for a little bit of value, but watch out for the weather and half your bets. Don't go too berserk here. I'm going to sniff up that even money there of Daniel Tupou. I'll never take odds on for any of your bankers, banker 1 or banker 2, unless they've backed in. Watch if the money comes for Tupou, he may come into odds on, but for now we'll take him because he's even money. Daniel Tupou for the Roosters, and then we're going to go out here a little bit wider, and we're going to go to Billy Smith, who is a prolific try scorer for the Roosters as our second banker, $3.50. He's our second banker. We're going to stick with Steve Crichton again, $3.25. Give him one more chance. 2 years ago, or last year, was it last year and the year before? He was a regular try scorer, Steve Crichton. Now he's got a lot of work to do with a lot of positional changes, and most of the time he'll get that ball away. He won't go himself. If the opportunity's right, he will go himself. So, but he's not a hog like William Kennedy from Cronulla. So let's have a look here. Steve Crichton is $3.25. He's our third banker. For our fourth banker, I want to go across to a guy that didn't convert for us last week, Angus Crichton, at $4.25 on the burst close to the line.
and then we're going to swing back towards Canterbury for our fifth leg, and that is going to be Bronson Sherry at 3:10. So there you have it, and we're going to stick in as our reserve, James Tedesco, along with Connor Tracy for the East there. So we're tipping East to beat the Bulldogs in a very, very close battle. Going over to the next match, and the next match is on Saturday. So we've done the 2 Friday matches. We've got Cronulla versus Gold Coast, Brisbane versus Dolphins. So we've actually got 3 games, and South at the latter stage at 7:35 versus Parramatta. Some tough matchups here. Let's have a look at some of the teams available. And we're going to go across to the NRL website. Just having a little bit of... Okay, I've got it. We just need to go back a page. All right. So we're up to the first game, which is at 3 o'clock. Make sure that doesn't catch you unaware there. 3 o'clock, very early start. And ins and outs for Cronulla, it is at Shark Park, which usually gets laden with a lot of puddles. So be aware of that as well. There's a lot of ins for Titans and a lot of ins for Sharks. It's Chris Vallejo coming back with Jaden Beryl for the Sharks, Jesse Colquhoun, and then or Cole, I don't know, it's like Colquhoun. I don't know how you say that strange name. But I'm going to say Colquhoun. And then Hawaiian Herodi, Noah Peru. He usually has another brother playing. Tuki Haya Tapahu. Very hard to pronounce some of these names. In for the Titans is Alan Fitzgibbon. Keno Kenny. Well, we haven't seen him for most of the season. And it's Futawaki is back, Futawaka. Philip Sami, that's a very good inclusion. Tino Fasamawali is back. Tom Weaver and Tony Francis. Outs for the Titans is Khan Pereira, Arama Hall, Brian Kelly, and also out for the Sharks with a suspension, Brenton Nakora and Jesse Roman with an injury. He won't be back to the finals possibly. Okay, let's go across here to the anytime try scorers. The last time they met, well, they're running 17th, dead last Gold Coast after looking like they were going to win last week. And they're running 7th, Cronulla. So last time they met, it was 44-0. And would you believe it was Cbus Stadium up in the Gold Coast? I think that was a total whitewash, and that was round 23 of last year. So interesting they haven't met since then. And anytime try scorer here, long odds on Ronaldo Mulatalo at $1.60, Sanoni Katoa at $1.70, Will Kennedy at $2.10, Chris Vallejo is $2.25, and then Jalen de Groot $2.25, Alan Fitzgibbon $2.25. Clicking on that one there, Braden Trindle $2.90, let us down last week. Philip Sami 3-1, Jojo Jafida at 3s, Teague Wilton and Bo Fermor. We've had him a lot in our parlays, but he went over last week when we didn't have him, and that was typical of what's been happening of late. But it happens with players coming good and just getting the right circumstances. Sam Verrills did that beautiful try for us last week. Surprisingly, he's 650. But anyway, we'll come back to them shortly. Let's and of course, Jaden Campbell cost us an absolute fortune last week when he didn't place the ball over the line straight away. He tried to improve the angle, and by stupidly doing so, he was only going to get an extra couple of feet on the goal kick to score under the post. Mitchell, his Aboriginal brother, knocked it out of his hands and taught him a lesson in maturity. So Jaden Campbell, 375. He'd be a good guy to lead out with. I think he's the one. Let's see if he can make up for it for all that money he lost this last week. Jaden Campbell, 375 is our first banker. Our second banker is Philip Sami for the Gold Coast at $3. So we're leading out with two Gold Coast players here. And then for our third leg, we're going to chuck in. I don't usually like chucking in an odds-on favourite, but according to the sources here, he's going to score. Ronaldo Mulatalo is our third leg at $1.60, so he's going to cut quite a bit of value out of our parlays. Then we're going to chuck in Marwin Hiroti, who's in the centres for Cronulla at $2.30. Moran Hiroti. And for our fifth leg, we're going to spin back towards Cronulla here for Billy Burns at $3.10. Unfortunately, we don't know how long he's going to get. And as our reserve there, Nicholas Hines at $3.50. Geez, I could tip either of these sides and not feel guilty. However, I can't see the Gold Coast destroying Cronulla. But I tell you what, if they do not win this game and win it like a really good rugby league side, I think Cronulla are just in the top 8 under sufferance. And I said that to you last week. I was really disappointed with their game against St George, but St George did play outstanding, so we're going to give them one more chance. Cronulla to beat Gold Coast there, and after last year's thrashing, we're going to stick with that. All right, let's go across to the next match. It's the second of the matches from Saturday. How are we going for time? 7:02. Okay, hold the line, Pim. Hello, I'm just online here. Hello, Liz. I'll call you back, okay? All right, bye. Bye. Okay, just dealing with people at the moment, and once they don't know I'm online, I can't stop we've only got another 50 minutes to get these last couple of selections on. So we were up to Cronulla and Gold Coast. We finished with that. But the second match is Brisbane versus Dolphins. Brisbane, and it looks like it's up there. Let me just double check that it's up Suncorp. I'm pretty sure it is. Let's have a look here. Having a lot of issues with the NRL website, but now it's back online, okay? So it is at Suncorp Stadium, Brisbane. So let's have a look at the team list. This is really, really important, this game, for both sides. Dolphins trying to stave off that 8th position. Whilst they're in 8 at the moment, there's ankle biters all over the place. And Broncos trying to solidify their top 8 position and make up for last week's horrendous. It wasn't a horrendous game ability-wise, effort-wise, but they lost those 2 vital players, 2 vital cogs in their gear system last week. They really need to stand up here. Corey Pikes is in. Delise Hoyter is in. Jesse Arthurs is back. That's a big plus for the Broncos. Jock Madden, Josh Rogers, Josiah Karapani, another good inclusion. Vas Samu, and then Harrison Graham is back in for the Dolphins. James Walsh, Kenneth Bromwich is back. That's a big inclusion for the Dolphins. Nonu and Peter Hola is back. Francis Mollo is out for the Dolphins. Of course, Adam Reynolds, Ezra Mann, and Solomon Cobbo, all victims of that injury from that last week's game against Melbourne. Okay, let's have a look at the matchups at least here for this game and see exactly who's covering what position. So Karapani's gone back to the wing. And then you've got Katoni Staggs in the centre as usual with Shibasaki. Let's see who else you got in here. So Corey Pikes is taking the 9. Corey Pikes is in the 9. Haas in the 10.
Grabowski in the 11. Jordan Ricky in the 12, who's been playing well lately. Patrick Carrigan in the 13. Tyson Smoothie, Kobe Hevington, fairly strong player. Ben Tolte and Jaden Hunt. So they've got some strength on the bench there. The reserves is Jesse Arthurs and Va'u Semu. And then so on the Dolphins side, it looks like Fado is still fullback and other players are back to their normal position. Jake Averillo in the centre, Max Fegai filling in for the injured Herbie Farmer. Geez, don't they miss him? And then Nafahu on the other wing there, up against Dean Mariner. Cody Nikorima, slowly getting back to form. He's still trying his heart out, but he's still got that niggling injury. But he wouldn't be playing if he was injured. Isaiah Katoa up against Ben Hunt. Ben Hunt has really got to steer the ship here. And I was having a talk to my brother yesterday, and I said that between Ben Hunt and Reynolds is fairly consistent. And sometimes Ben Hunt can be inconsistent. But he's got a lot of weight on his shoulders to carry this Broncos side across the line this weekend. Kurt Donahue got a big fine after dissent last week. Oren Keeley, Finney Fuliaki. It's not as though they've got hopeless players there. Marshall King, Mark Nichols is back. And no, they've still got a fairly solid team. Though I'd still reckon they miss him so dearly. Herbie Farnworth, he is such a 200% player. Let's have a look at the what the TAB have got them up at. Head-to-head, Brisbane $1.65, Dolphins $2.25. And last time they met, it was Brisbane 20, Dolphins 12, and that was at Suncorp Stadium, but it was Dolphins' home ground. As you know, that's their shared home ground. And it was an 8-point victory to Broncos. Let's have a look here. Hamasai Tabuai-Fidow leads up the market at $1.75. Reece Walsh 2.10. Norfahu 2.05. Jesse Arthurs, well, he's in the market, but he's only a reserve at this stage, so you can't really put him into the contention. Katoni Staggs 2.60. Jake Averillo 3.10. And Cody Nikorima 3.75. I'm going to stand out here. Jake Averillo at 3.10. I just love him as a player all over the park in any position. I think he's the 100% footballer. But we'll stand him out with Katoni Staggs at 2.60. So your first banker, Jake Averillo for the Dolphins at 3.10. Second standout, Katoni Staggs at 2.60. And then we're going to keep on with the Broncos here and put in Josiah Karapani as the third leg. As the fourth leg, we're going to spin back to the hammer side Tabuai-Fidow at $1.75. And we really need a bit of value here for our third leg. And we're going to chuck in Cody Nikorima at $3.75 for our fourth leg, Cody Nikorima. And for our fifth leg, Billy Walters at $5.25 there. We had Oren Keeley the week before. He scored for us 2 weeks ago. He would be our reserve. I'll be chucking in Oren Keeley as the reserve to go over. So let's move along to the next match there. As I said, I'm narrowly tipping Brisbane Broncos to stand up against the Dolphins here. If they lose, it's going to be a very, very hard run to the line for both sides, in fact, because Dolphins are going to be trying to stave off Roosters. But yet again, Roosters have to beat Canterbury as well. So there's a lot of big question marks and exclamation marks at this stage before the first game kicks off in about 35 minutes. So let's get on to the next match before we get laboured down. It's the South and Parramatta match. We'll just have a quick look to see who's in for South and Parramatta because we're running out of time as we draw closer to this first game. And I'll just reverse it back here. And there it is. That's the second game's at 7:35. Well, that's the last game of the Saturday match, should I say? And it's Parramatta versus
South Sydney's home stadium, Allianz Stadium. I think it's going to be a wet track there as well. 2:30, the Bunnies have come up on Sportsbet, and $1.62 Parramatta, who should be hard to beat, but a lot of people will be tipping South as well. Okay, let's have a look at the team list. Most importantly, Jai Gray's gone back to fullback. Cody Walker is in. Hazen Miller's. It's Lewis Dodd is back in as well. Salesi Atata and Shaquille Mitchell. Dane Keir is in for the Parramatta Eels. Hayes Dunster. Isaiah Iongi after his broken hand. And it looks like Matali is also back in there. Torm Matali. And out is Lachlan Hubner for South Sydney. Okay, let's have a look and see who's taking up those positions. And look at some of the matchups here. Latrell Mitchell is playing, so that's interesting. He's the captain up against Will Penasini. Alex Johnson, he's in there. Jamie Humphries, second game back. Some really interesting matchups here. This could be a tough game to pick. And I'm expecting a big game again from Moses and also Josh Adokar. Dylan Brown, they've kept him in the 4 there. That's interesting. Zach Lomax has to lift here. I think he has to have one of his best games of the season. Okay, let's have a quick gaze at the TAB because we need to get these bets on, and it is now 7:11. We've only got about 35 minutes to put these bets on for the first game, and it's the replay of the grand final from last year. South up against Parramatta, 2.25 on the TAB and $1.65 there on your TAB. Last time they met, it was South 32 defeating Parramatta 16, but that was at CommBank Stadium. Okay, so they may have a little bit of the wood on them there. To score a try, Alex Johnson is at $1.50. Josh Adokar at $1.70. He went over twice last week. Zach Lomax, $1.80. They're all too skinny to start with. Bailey Bentley Harper's not bad value there at $2.10. And then we open up that page. Will Penasini, $2.75. Whether he was scored 2 weeks in a row is another question. He's only been back for a little while. A lot of try scorers here, they have not gone over for some time looking at this list, especially the forwards. Yeah, very, very bad there for South. And Kalomi Talagi, the Parramatta, Kilmore Talagi, 4.25, Jack Williams, 4-1. He scored for us about 6 games ago. That was really good. He got us great value. Tallis Duncan, we're going to stand out as the banker here. I think this is the game he's going to have to stand up at. Tallis Duncan, 3.75. He's been good to us in the past. He scored a cracker of a try for us 2 games ago. We're going to stand out South Tallis Duncan, and then we're going to stick in. Now, last week we stood in Jordan Samrani, and he did not get the run. So I'm not going to make the same mistake again. I was entertaining him because he is a prolific try scorer, but we're going to move across to Latrell Mitchell at $2.60. Hasn't scored for 4 or 5 matches, and he's set up a lot of tries. Chuck him in as the other banker, Latrell Mitchell there, $2.60. So we've got 2 South guys on top. And then we're going to check in Zach Lomax as the 3rd banker. As the 4th banker, Alex Johnson at $1.50. As the 5th banker, Josh Adokar at $1.70. And then we're going to go a little bit wider here for Parramatta at Isaiah Iongi at $2.30. So there you go. That's that game done and dusted. And there I would be tipping, I'd be honestly tipping a narrow win to South Sydney, even though Parramatta are the favourites. I think South Sydney need to win that one, and I'm expecting Tallis Duncan to have a big game. Of the next 2 matches, have we got enough time to fix these? Otherwise, we'll just have to give you our selections. We're starting to run out of time. It's now 7:15. South versus Parramatta, we've already done. The Sunday games, the first game's at 2 o'clock, West versus Manly, and North Queensland versus Newcastle. Let's go across here. And pretty good value there. The Tigers at 220 against Manly. People are saying Manly's season is dusted. I think it is, but and they always have trouble trying to beat the Tigers. Let's see exactly where it's at as well. We need. I think it's at the stadium, but now I'm at Campbelltown. But I'm trying to have a look here because we're running out of time and this phone's running out of energy too. We've got 26% left. Of course, Canberra got the bye this week. It is at Allianz Stadium. Interesting. Allianz Stadium, 225 and 165. Let's have a quick look at the team list anyway. That's really important. Charlie Murray, Heath Mason, Kitla Lalili, Mapabalangi, Christian, and Lalili is in, and Starfatoa, a good inclusion for the Tigers. In for Manly is Ben Travojevic, Clayton Falalo, Cam Chung Tong, Joey Walsh, and Lehigh Hopewadi. Jake Travojevic, yet again, another HIA. Questions have to be asked about Jake's future. Unfortunately, he's had 3 shocking HIAs with severe concussion, 3 knockouts this year. He's in that Victor Radley state. If I was him, I'd honestly be wearing headgear because it's not good. It is not good. Out also is Alex Seyfarth and Trishna Hope for the West Tigers. Okay, let's go across here and have a look at the TAB. As we're slowly getting our way to this last game. This is the penultimate game, and then our last game we'll cover in the next 5 minutes. So last time they met, it was at Pines Park, or the old Brookie, 28-10. Manly were doing pretty well in the competition at that stage, and that was round 17 of it was this year, round 17, 2025. Well, they're doing better than what they're doing over the last 3 or 4 weeks. So let's have a look here. The first and anytime try scorer, should I say, 1 or 2. What do you do? Tolotau Kola has not let us down. He's 210. Odds on is Falalo. Jason Saab, $1.85. We'll never start with odds on. Not here at Every Point's a Winner. Sunia Turuva has not gone over for a long while. He must be niggling a bit of an injury. He's just not getting the ball that he used to, and he's lost a bit of impetus. Isn't it funny? Since Gerald Skelton's come back, Starfatoa has also been starved of the ball. So they keep on going to Skelton's wing, and it's working wonders for them. Taylor May, 3-1. Heath Mason, 325. Samuela Fainu, 375. Dale Cherry Evans, 4s. He hasn't gone over for about 6 matches. Adam Dewey, who had that scintillating blinder the last time. They had the bye last time, so this is their first run back from a spell. 475. That's pretty good value there. So let's stand out Adam Dewey. He's hard to catch. He's not your total prolific try scorer, but we're going to put him in anyway. 475, because it's a bit of a flip of the coin for me this match. And then we're going to go out to Luke Lalili for West Tigers, 220. Jareen Buller as the third leg. Another West Tiger, Jareen Buller as our third leg. And then I'm expecting Starfatoa as our fourth leg to go over 250. And then we're going to lean back towards Tom Trbojevic at 210. And for our fifth leg, there, Tolotau Kola and also reserve. We will chuck in Ruben Garrick as our reserve. Let's move across to the next match there. I'm leaning towards tipping West Tigers here, but wouldn't be surprised if Manly caused the boil over. Well, it's really not a boil over, but West Tigers are in scintillating form at the moment for the West Tigers, and yeah, Manly are the favourites, so it's not going to be a boil over. But in my eyes, it's against what I'm tipping. I'll probably be tipping West Tigers there. I'll leave it till just before the kickoff at 7:50. But that's who I'm leaning towards, and most of my anytime try scorers are West Tigers there. North Queensland versus Newcastle. It is $1.43 North Queensland, Newcastle 2.85. And on the Monster Cup, mind you, as we get to this last match, it's Scotty leading by 4 to yours truly, and then another 2 points back to who's making a big run at the line now is Peter Connors there, 2 points behind the Axe, and with a 4-point lead. So he only has to tip steadily to get across the line. Scotty Pearce-McLeod, who may be calling a few games with us here through the final series. Fingers crossed. Okay, so let's go across to that game, but we'll also need to have a look at the ins and outs. Okay. NRL. And go down to the last game. This game's at 4:05 because the first game is at 2. So this one's 4:05. As I said before, I wish they gave you another 20 minutes to arrange your bets between the games. I don't really like starting to put my bets on when I'm waiting to see if I can get anytime try scorers for the game before. So I don't know how you feel about that, but I wish they gave us punters a little bit more time before we had to put the next game on. Okay, so running 14th there, the Cowboys, and the Knights 15th. So this is really somewhat of a battle for the wooden spoon for the Knights. Are they going to stand up, or is it going to be the Cowboys trying to wend off? Well, I think they're in enough safety there, unless they keep on losing the next 3 matches, the Cowboys, to get away from the wooden spoon, where Knights are right in the thick of things. The team list here, ins and outs. Brodie Jones is in for the Knights. Connor Furtado, never heard of him. Jack Hetherington. Jackson Hastings back. That's a good inclusion. James Schiller, another good inclusion. And Matthew Arthur for the Knights. Ins for the Cowboys, Harrison Edwards, Jordan McLean, Kari Lawton, Thomas McKaylee, and Valami Valea. Very, very interesting ins there. And Cohen Hess is out. He'll miss the rest of the season, I believe. Phoenix Crossland and Tyson Gamble is out for the Knights. So let's go across here and look at the matchups. It is up at the Townsville Stadium, so you would think they would definitely have a good advantage here. Scott Drinkwater up against Connor Furtado. Well, this is going to be interesting for the Knights because they've got nothing to lose anyway. But I've never heard of Connor Furtado playing fullback there. Is it risky, or has he been playing really good in the lower grades? Valami up against Dominic Young. Purdue up against Gagai. Gagai's back to the centre. Interesting. Zach Laybutt and Bren up against Bradman Best, of course. Then you have Braden Burns up against Marju. Just looking at some of the other matchups there. Cogger up against Dearden. Cogger, he tries hard, Cogger, but he's not in the Dearden class, is he really? And that's about all she wrote. Looking at the interchanges there, Ruben Cott up against Frizzell, and the forwards there, Bateman and Nanai up against McEwen and Guy Pearce-Ball. They're still laden with holes all over their team, Newcastle Knights. Be good to see them win for pride, but I'll be tipping the North Queensland Cowboys here. They just failed last week against Parramatta, so I think they're going to atone here back at home in front of a strong home crowd. Check the weather, though. That could come into play. If it's wet weather, it may be suited more towards Newcastle. So let's swing across here. So pay attention to that in your tips and your bets. Let's click on that. Last time they met, it was North Queensland 28 defeating Newcastle, and that was last year when Newcastle and was that the game where they knocked them out? It might have been 28-16. 14th of the 9th, I think it was. Yeah, it was a qualifying final. Yeah, God, that was a tragic game. How Ruben Cotter's try was allowed was a blow away for most Knight fans, including me. So anyway, it's been a horrendous year for the Knights, but let's go on with it anyway and see if we can get some value here. Let's open up the bank here with. Love to see Bradman Best score, but no one's feeding the ball. He's got no Fletcher Sharp or no Ponga to feed him the ball. But I'd love to stand him out. Let's stand him out, Bradman Best, along with one of my favourite players, Jackson Purdue. He's the other banker, Jackson Purdue, 210, along with Scott Drinkwater as the third leg for North Queensland. As the fourth leg, it'll be remiss of me not to have him, Tom Dearden, as the fourth leg. And as the fifth leg there, Valami Valaya, 325. And as your emergency, let's chuck in Fletcher Hunt as the emergency reserve there. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for having us. It's time to get on with the tipping and put these bets on. We have exactly 30 minutes before the kickoff. May the best team win tonight. And it is up here in Penrith and facing off against their own old rivals in the grand final of Melbourne Storm. May the best team win. God bless, take care and drive safely on the weekend and half your bets, especially on those wet tracks. See you for now. Axel Phillips.